This is Councilman Victor Jones calling the June 24th, 2020 meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. Here present in the room, we've got Councilman Johnson, we've got Councilman Moore, we've got myself, obviously, Mayor Jay Wagner. As far as what I see remote, I think I saw Councilman Jefferson. Councilwoman Peters, are you on yet?
Yes, I'm on.
Councilwoman Peters. Is there anyone else remoting in? Councilman Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Williams?
It's Councilman Holmes.
Oh, Councilman Holmes, thank you. We do have a quorum, so we'll call it order. This entire meeting is basically going to be briefing on multiple subjects by Police Chief Ken Schultz. And so with that, I'll just turn it over to you, Chief. Thanks for being here.
Sir, I appreciate it. I've got several things I think are critical that I cover today. It might take a few minutes here. I've got quite a bit, like I said, a lot of material. I think it's important, so if you bear with me. First, I want to address a citizen complaint that I think is coming at a very troubling time, and it's very concerning. I'll explain more about that. I want to talk a little bit about the, I think the current atmosphere that we're dealing with. So let me start off by saying this. It's been an extremely challenging time period for law enforcement in the past couple of weeks as we've been navigating the situation that we're in. And I'll tell you, I'm extremely proud of the officers and what they've done so far, what they continue to do. The first thing I want to talk about again is a complaint letter that was sent in. Normally, I don't make these things public, but this particular letter was sent to, I know the mayor got it, I assume some of our council folks got it, received it at the police department. I'm pretty confident that it's probably gone out to the community. It highlights some pretty devastating things about the police department. There's accusations of alleging racial bias, police brutality, extreme failures in the training and quality of our officers. Again, because of the situation we find ourselves in, I think I need to address this publicly because I think it's very damaging. So I'm going to start off by reading the letter. I'm not going to read all of it. Another reason that I'm specifically bringing this thing up at this point in time is because the author says that the chief would like, said that he would like help from the community, so please use my statement just for that. So I'm going to take the author up on that. The important parts of the message state, I'm reaching out to you about an attack by some of your officers I witnessed outside of Walmart. Officers seem to be clearing out a fight. I saw about 3 officers telling a guy to leave while walking behind him. His back was turned away, and out of nowhere, one of them football tackled this guy. He landed him head and shoulders first into the side of an oncoming vehicle, sandwiched in between one traveling in the opposite direction. I was placed right in front of this seeming hostile, life-threatening situation, observing an intense and heart-wrenching struggle as the guy tried to roll over to keep from sliding under the moving vehicle. It was clear that the officer made an extremely severe attempt to push this guy under the wheels of the car. In process of the cowardly officer's reckless and extremely dangerous tackling, he injured a man who walked away holding his head and limping. Officers apologized, but said they just had to do that. It's important to note that the situation only escalated because of the severely poorly trained, inept, incompetent, confidence-lacking officers. During this, the crowd, which were shoppers, yelled at them, saying they better not grab or reach for their guns. I did notice that this officer seemed extremely uncomfortable, extremely frightened, extremely unstable. He nervously reached for his gun several times. I thought that he would use it and pull it out and start firing into the crowd. He was exerting an unusual, extreme, and excessive use of force. I was witness to cruel and unusual punishment that should no way land a person fighting for his life and fearing he could be crushed or shot for doing what he was asked. The 3 of them acted like a gang in a mob-type mentality. It is clear this man was an extremely severe threat to them. Their fight was one racially driven and ingrained. The force used was severely excessive and overwhelmingly exceeded amounts necessary to defuse the situation. Their force was culturally void, cowardly driven, and disgustingly unreasonable. On that day, I experienced officers acting under the color of law to bribe the citizen of his rights. Chief said he would like help from the community, so use my statement just for that. Make sure these extremely dangerous individuals are held accountable for their sloppy actions intent to practice extreme and severe tactics that could result in extreme and severe injury or death. It is clear that there are numerous patterns of these practices within our department, and we must work together and eliminate such vile and revolting practices and behaviors. Face value, that's extremely concerning. And obviously, whenever I read it, it caused me a lot of concern about the perception that people are going to have about our police department. As you see on the slide here, I've told you numerous times, anytime that we had the use of force, we initiate an investigation that comes all the way through to my desk. We also take complaints, even anonymous complaints, and we act on those. So what I can tell you is that prior to receiving this letter, we had actually already investigated this particular situation. It did happen on June 5th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at Walmart on North Main Street. What we ended up with was several calls requesting immediate police assistance because of a large disturbance that had broken out inside the store. Our officers quickly responded to that scene, got on top of it, got everything quelled. And what we concluded was that there was a disturbance between a man and a woman. It appeared to be racially driven and racially motivated. As we investigated, we concluded that the female was the one that had initiated the violence, so she was placed under arrest. At that time, we ended up with some other issues going on. But let me tell you this, one of the things that we always do is we look for video, we look for evidence, we look for statements from people about what's happened so that we can put our pieces of the puzzle together. The state legislators have put us in a position that it's really hard for me to release body cam footage and dash cam video. Reality is I didn't end up with any from this particular incident. There's cars blocking our vehicles, so we didn't have that. What I do have though is a video that we pulled from social media from somebody that was on the scene at that time. Since it is not governed by our body cam legislation, I believe that I can release this. I've consulted with my police attorney, with the city attorney. What I do need to say though is that there's some language on this that we don't condone. It's out there, it's not our officers, it's the videographer and the personnel that were in the backgrounds of this. So if anybody's streaming this anywhere that they don't want inappropriate language being utilized, I'm going to challenge you to be careful right now. Give me one moment as I pull up our videos here. And as I'm pulling it up, I'm going to tell you this has been viewed over 183,000 times right now. You know, we have 115,000 citizens in our city. I don't have audio. Ryan, I need some help with the audio from this. In a position you can do so.
I'll be up.
Thank you. I apologize for this. I think you guys need to.
So June the 5th was a Friday?
Yes, sir.
Friday at 3.
I believe that's correct. I'll tell you, it was in the middle of everything else we had going on. At this time, there was a planned protest that they were planning on taking over North Main Street, marching from the Wendy's there. Don't have audio. I don't know why I've got it here. I've got it there. Just gotta get your exercise. Greensboro, maybe they not have one.
That whole flash out there, don't need to drag it onto the desktop. Drag that over while we're here. Process. Let it play and see if any sound picks up. Actually, I'll take it. There you go.
What's that, Chief?
All right, guess we'll play without sound. Pay attention to what you see. You see my officers out here escorting this guy out into the parking lot.
Is he the one that called for help, or did management call for help?
Management did.
Okay.
Nice.
Jim was shouting for the officer's ID number while I'll let the video play out so there's no concerns about me cutting off any part that was captured in this letter. So I hope you guys were able to see clearly what the situation was there, what our officers had going on. Again, we completed an investigation prior to this happening. Interestingly enough, we spoke to the victim. Again, as I was telling the story, turned out there was a disturbance inside. A group of people gathered around were threatening the guy that you saw being escorted outside. Our officer decided for his safety, they should escort him outside. As they were walking him out to the parking lot, trying to figure out where his car was, a gentleman came running up from behind, struck him violently in the back of the head, tried to run from our officers. Our officers grabbed him, tackled him to the ground where the guy gave up. No resistance at all. My officers backed off on the use of force, immediately handcuffed him, stood him up, and walked him away. The rest of the officers are specifically sitting there, keeping the other people apart, keeping them away from our officers. No hands-on guns, no accusations, no wild behavior. I will tell you, one of those officers out there has less than a year experience here in the police department. The other had 16. When you read that letter, that is extremely concerning, but I think what you're seeing right here actually highlights the professionalism of the officers of the High Point Police Department. Again, the use of force was minimal. The false allegations that you saw, and while you couldn't really hear the crowd over here, that crowd is typical of what our officers are seeing on a regular basis, both in High Point and across the country right now. I told you 184,000 people as of Monday have viewed this video on social media. There were thousands and thousands of comments on there. Which I try not to do, but as I took the time to scroll through that, what I saw was generally an indication of disgust for what our officers are dealing with. And I'll tell you again, not only was this a public complaint, so I brought it up, but I want to say this right now. Officers are questioning them as to what's going to happen if we find ourselves in a serious situation in High Point. They want assurances that fair reviews will be conducted, and that if they comply with policy and the law and act reasonable, that they're going to be defended. And they're asking this because right now that's not what we're seeing around the country right now. So my plea right now as the police chief is that if you find ourselves here in a situation in High Point, please work with us. Please remember the accusations that were made in this letter versus the video that was actually captured, and do what you can to support our agency. If we're doing wrong, we'll admit that. We will go forward. We'll advance from that. If we're doing right, though, we need to support these officers. They lay it all on the line right now for our citizens, and I think that we owe them support in doing so. Any questions about this use of force complaint? I think it's pretty obvious once you see the video. And again, I'm lucky that we happen to have the video from social media, and I'm sure you guys can go out there and query that on your own. All right, one of the reasons I know this meeting was called was to address a topic that's picking up speed around the country in the form of 8 Can't Wait. In it are 8 demands calling for immediate changes in reforming police policies. I'm going to tell you right now, I'll tell you, I think that we've missed an opportunity potentially where we could have stood up with the 300 officers of the police department and our citizens. I saw a big rush to jump on board with people that don't understand our policies, our procedures, or our leadership. They're making demands, and it's been great the way we finally ended up here, that we've come together as a meeting to actually evaluate where we stand before we demand changes. So I'm going to take the next few minutes to cover the points that are addressed in the 8 Can't Wait. My challenge again, we do it all the time as police officers. We've got to evaluate everybody's actions individually based on what they're doing. And my challenge to our community is that you can't judge the hearts of thousands and thousands of law enforcement officers by the actions of a few bad ones. Please keep that in mind. Again, I'm the chief of the High Point Police Department. I know people expect me to defend us, but I will tell you, you're gonna see how advanced we are beyond these 8 can't wait right now as we move forward. And let me also say this, don't mistake what I'm saying. I hold ourselves to the highest standards that we can. We hold each other accountable. I'm actually glad that the group that sent this letter, that initiated the 8 can't wait, I'm glad they put it out there. I'm glad they actually documented on paper that they're there to hold us accountable should we violate people's rights or break the law. I'll tell you though, I'm disappointed that they didn't also stand up and say that they would stand with us as long as we were doing the right thing. It's kind of, it's frustrating because this is the same group that for 4 years as chief has called me to numerous conferences and forums demanding that I do something to stop the violence. And it's rightly so. Police department, that's our job. We're supposed to be out there stopping the violence. What we need though is, just like I said on this previous video, I hope that they're going to stand with us and call for calm, let investigations happen. If we have a critical event that happens here in High Point, I'm telling you, stopping violence is a risky business. By its very nature, most of the people that are involved in it are carrying guns. They've shot or potentially killed people. It's dangerous work, but our officers are good at it. Because of this, I do call on everyone who asks to keep the city safe to support us as long as we lawfully do those jobs. So again, that's my challenge. We're not perfect, and please don't take it the wrong way. We're always looking for opportunities to improve, but accountability should go both ways, and that's my ask of our city for our agency. Advancing on through this, and again, you guys have had these documents uploaded so that you can address them. You can Google anywhere pretty much and find the 8 can't wait and the ideas behind it. Let me show you where we are in the High Point Police Department, and then I'll see if you have any questions. One of the first particular demands is that we cease chokeholds. You're gonna hear me say 31 quite a bit here, and to be honest, 2 months out, August will be the 31, but for 31 years, chokeholds have been illegal in the High Point Police Department. My entire career, we've never authorized those. Now, it's a little bit unusual. We write our policies and what's allowed. We don't write down everything that's not allowed. So while it was never included in here, a while back, we went and changed it so there would be no concerns from the community about what our position was as far as uses of force and the chokehold. So documented within our policy is that, and we've never allowed that to be utilized in our city. Second subject dealt with de-escalation. Again, 31 years ago, I went to Davidson County Community College and learned BLET. They taught us that in BLET way back then. We've constantly been working that as well throughout our agency. It's our expectations. It's built into our general orders. We constantly train that. We do scenario-based training, lots of opportunities where we're out there specifically focused on de-escalation. We don't want to use force. We have a very mapped progress of how we want things to be done. My presence, the reason I'm in a dark uniform with all the shiny objects on it, and the reason we look like we do is because our presence is the first level of force. From there, we go through communications, hands-on, soft hand tactics, and it builds up from there. Any chance we get, though, our efforts are to de-escalate, to drive that threat level back down. And I want to assure you, again, here's some of the points that I've pulled out of our policy that you also have that mandates the de-escalation to eliminate the potential of having to use lethal force. It talks about our presence. It talks about the preferred method. It talks about how we can go about doing so and what the benefits are. So this has always been part of our policies in the High Point Police Department as long as I can remember. Well, since I've been there. Regarding the verbal warnings, again, verbal direction is our second level of force. Presence is always the first, verbal direction is second. You can see I've highlighted a section here that specifically talks about our requirement for using verbal commands. Now I'm going to ask you guys to have some reasonableness about you. It says whenever possible and when such delays won't compromise safety. Think about the worst case scenario. If we're in a deadly force situation, we're walking down the street, somebody pulls a gun and starts shooting at the officers. Am I going to address them for not saying, sir, drop the gun, stop shooting me before they pull a gun? Obviously not. But at any time that we have the tactical advantage, when it's not putting other people or us at risk, verbal directions are always out there. You're going to hear the videos that we're out there utilizing, begging people to stop resisting, begging people to put down weapons. That's continuous, and that's part of our expectations. However, again, you have to have some common sense here that in a situation where an ambush, for example, we're going to be practical. We have to expect our officers to be able to react to save themselves and the citizens that might be coming under attack. I do have some questions, and I don't know that you guys are the experts. If you have some feedback for me, I'll be glad to hear that. There's a demand that officers exhaust every other option before shooting somebody. I don't really understand how that works. I don't know if any of you are runners, but can you imagine running to exhaustion? What does that look like? In my mind, that means I'll run until I can't run anymore. So let's go back to our use of force to exhaust all levels before going to shooting. How long do I have to stand there with mere presence before I've exhausted that level and I can move up to verbal direction? How long do I have to exhaust verbal direction before I can move up to hands-on tactics? How long do I have to exhaust hands-on tactics before I can use an intermediate weapon like a baton or pepper spray? A lot of times that's going to work great, but again, let's go worst case scenario. We're walking down the street, and trust me, I remember, I guess it was my second or third year in at the police department. I was walking through a project area, and next thing I knew, the glass was being shot out of the car next to me. I will tell you, my first thought was to take cover and to figure out who was shooting at me, and I pulled out a gun. The end of that story is I never saw who fired at us. We eventually ended up finding the rounds, but I had no idea. I was ambushed that day. And the ability to exhaust all options before I pulled out my gun makes no sense to me. It's a no-win situation. Legally, let me tell you where we stand. Civilians in North Carolina by law are not required to exhaust every level, every option before utilizing deadly force. Officers, our guidelines for the use of deadly force are set by a state statute, 15A401. And I'll tell you, the policy I've laid out in front of you is more restrictive than our state law about the utilization of force. But again, we go progressive as much as possible, but there's extreme cases, and unfortunately, that's what law enforcement sometimes deals with, where we have to resort to deadly force. And in those encounters, my officers are expected to act under law, act under policy, and to act reasonable. Anybody have any comments about the exhaust all alternatives before shooting? Anything that can explain an angle I'm missing in this? All right.
Chief Schultz,
Yes.
it's Councilman Holmes. I want to go back just really briefly to the requires warning for shooting, and then we'll get to the exhaust all alternatives. I think that what we're talking about here might be a little, and I appreciate you addressing this, but I think what we're talking about here is not situation where there's a weapon involved. I don't think people around the country are protesting if you're involved if there's a weapon involved and there ends up being death from that. I think what people are talking about is the instances where unarmed people end up dead in interaction with police. So when we talk about requires warnings before shootings, it's not an ambush situation that we're talking about. It's when you encounter someone in a routine situation, or maybe not even a routine situation, a heightened situation, and they're unarmed and there's no discernible weapon, or there's nothing that could become an immediate threat to the police officer's life, and then there's a shooting or a forced escalation that ends up in death. And so when we're talking about exhausting all alternatives before shooting, we're not talking about when someone has a weapon, even if it's something like a knife, something that can be thrown as a projectile. We're talking about when there's an unarmed citizen that you're facing, and we're talking about using the force escalation model so that you don't end up having to shoot. So I don't think this is really, we're not talking apples to apples here. What we're talking about is what is the protocol that the police go through when there's unarmed people? Because Mr. Floyd was unarmed. You know, Ahmaud Arbery was unarmed. And I know that wasn't a police situation, but we're talking about the unarmed interaction, that don't show an immediate or discernible threat to the officer's life. So this is, I think we need to get on the same page here on why the national climate is the way that it is. No one is going to begrudge you if you get ambushed in a firefight for you firing back and not giving notice to the shooter. We're talking about when someone is standing in front of you and there's no weapon, no visible weapon, or you have already determined that this citizen is unarmed. So I just want to make sure that we're talking apples to apples here when we're talking about what a can't wait actually is, that we feel the purpose of addressing a can't wait and how we can eliminate some of the situations that happen, like Mr. Floyd or the gentleman in Atlanta.
Thank you, sir. And that's my concern, is that the policies are adopted for all situations. Let me refer to the slide that's up here. What you see is the actions for level 5. This is the only time the High Point Police Department, and technically anybody operating under North Carolina state law within our state, can utilize deadly force. It says that the subject possesses or threatens use of a weapon, is aggressively offensive without a weapon, with the intent being to assault another in a life-threatening manner. That's the only time we can use deadly force. The scenarios you're describing, where there's an unarmed guy and there's a conflict or just verbal disturbance or even wrestling, that does not rise to a level of shooting at all in our book. The only time that would transition over into a deadly force situation, if that action ends up threatening the life or potentially creating a serious threat of serious injury to that officer or somebody else. So I have no problem, obviously, in a situation with an unarmed guy that's not being aggressive towards officers, there shouldn't be any use of force elevated to the level of deadly force. And that action is all based off of the subject that we're dealing with. The problem I have, though, is that as I incorporate these into our police department policy, it says that anytime we are dealing with anybody, these are the rules. So if you'll go back and look at our general order, you're going to see levels 1 through 5. Level 1, it talks about somebody compliant. The only actions that we can take whenever somebody's compliant, we can use handheld soft hand tactics. I can reach up, I can physically take control of them, I can handcuff them. Anything beyond that is outside the realms of law and outside the realms of policy. From there, it escalates up to where the person is actually resisting arrest, they're aggressively fighting us, all the way up to the point where they're trying to actively kill or seriously injure us. The key here is in our officer responses. The only time a firearm or other lethal option is allowed is under level 5. And then as you go back and look at the document that I've uploaded, it clearly demonstrates what options an officer can have. And again, it's allowed, it's not what's not allowed, because we could write forever about all the tactics that we don't allow, but it specifically lays out all the options that an officer can go through. So please review that. Think about the scenarios that you guys are actually considering in mind, and evaluate where those fall under a level of resistance. Whether it's no level of resistance, the just trying to keep from being handcuffed, fighting the officer, all the way up to deadly force. That's where we need to focus on our response. Look at the options for what an officer can do and tell me if you disagree with that. I think once you go through and you analyze those things, you're going to understand that the actions that we authorize are justified up until that point. If there's concerns about those particular issues, then that's what we need to address. But again, we've got to be careful because we are a policy, a law, a constitution-driven agency. If we make a rule, that rule isn't for just these situations, it's for anything a law enforcement officer encounters. My general orders address all of that. So specifically, please focus on what those actions are of the individual, what our authorized options are. And I guarantee you, in a situation that they don't have a deadly weapon trying to harm us, verbal direction is going to be going, and there won't be the deadly force situation because it's not authorized, it's not justified, it's not legal. Any other questions? And again, I understand in the context of requiring the exhaustion of everything before shooting. It doesn't say require the exhaustion of everything before shooting an unarmed person or from a person that's just giving verbal feedback to you. It doesn't say any of that. You've got to look at the words that are here and understand that that is the policy that we adopt. That's what we apply all the way across the board. So look at that. But again, I'm confident that once you look at the North Carolina General Statute 15A401, once you look at our general orders about when we can use force and what type of force we can use, I don't think you're going to have any concerns about those situations taking place here in High Point. Moving forward, the portion of the policy that talks about the mandate to intervene. Again, this is a situation. This hasn't always been in our general order. This is one that was added to the use of force general order to address the concerns that are happening now. This has always been in our standards of conduct. I can think of several times over the years where our standards of conduct, our understanding that this patch means more than an individual that we're out there working with, has resulted in somebody stopping an officer for doing some type of action or coming and reporting an action taken. I can think of arrests over my career that have resulted in officers finding out that somebody at the police department was doing something wrong. I can think of cases that have been dismissed because somebody's uncovered evidence and information that challenged the case and that showed the opportunity that was out there. Whenever I took my oath, I think every single one of us swore to do this particular thing, to intervene if we see something going wrong, to stop specifically excessive force, and to report that. It's clearly in our policy manual, and that's our expectations. Shooting into moving vehicles is interesting. What we're saying is that if somebody is simply trying to drive over an officer and kill him, the officer cannot use a deadly force, can't shoot into that car. So as long as you're just trying to drive my officers over, we can't shoot them. Sounds kind of interesting as I verbalize that. And unfortunately, we found ourselves in situations. Within the 4 years I've been chief, I've had a situation similar to this, which is why I had to go back and specifically insert this policy 2 or 3 or 4 years back to address that particular issue. What we've got is a gigantic piece of metal that is hurtling very fast at an officer. Even the most deadliest accurate officer pulling a gun and engaging the driver at close distance is going to do nothing to save the officer's life. You can shoot the driver immediately and that car is still going to continue to run. So we had to do some training exercises. We had to show videos. We had to do reenactments for our officers. And we explained, if you find yourself in a situation where a car is coming at you, don't get your gun, get out of the way. Save yourself at that point. So you will see a disclaimer here though. We can't use deadly force when only the vehicle is a deadly threat against our officers. We have violence out here in the streets. We have drive-bys going on all the time throughout the country where people are leaning out, firing guns out of the cars. If we find ourselves in a situation like that, where the deadly threat is something besides the car, then that allows us to shoot back into that vehicle. I mean, otherwise somebody could pull up in front of us, stay in their car, and just shoot at us from that vehicle as they're slowly driving away and think that they were safe. We got to protect our officers. We have to have common sense. But I'll tell you, it was a hard sell, but you're not going to stop a car from running over you. This is our policy for shooting into moving vehicles. The last point. Well, I'm gonna miss one. Somehow I've missed one. Do you see what's number 7 on your guys' sheets on the form? Do you see it?
Move to number 8.
I'll tell you what. I'll get back to the picture here. Required use of force continuum. So I'm not sure where my slide on that went. The use of force continuum is something, again, that's what we utilize all the time. It laid it out in several of these slides I've talked about. The requirements, again, start with mere presence, going up to verbal direction, moving up to soft hand control, hard hand control, intermediate weapons, pepper sprays. There's a placing dogs. All those things are put together. They've always been in existence at the High Point Police Department. Now, I'll tell you, we don't fight fair. If somebody comes up and decides that they're going to fist fight us, I don't expect my officers to fist fight back. These guys are be professional fighters for all I know. We're going to accelerate one level above to control that situation. That'd be a great opportunity to pull out pepper spray or baton against somebody coming to fist fight us. If somebody pulls out something above that, we're going to accelerate above that. If they're trying to flee from us, we're simply trying to control them, like you saw in the video at Walmart, take them down to the ground, and once that resistance stops, then we stop. So the force escalation, de-escalation policy is an ongoing part of our training. It's in our policy, it's in the requirement. And somehow I missed the reporting process as well. It should be on the sheet that you have listed at number 8. All uses of force are required to be reported, required to be investigation. As chief, I read every single one of these that comes across the desk. Again, just like the Walmart video I showed you, before we ever received that letter, I had an investigation that talked about, they interviewed that guy who told me that, or told the investigating officers that I got a call that my stepdaughter had been in a fight, that someone hit her. I didn't wait to see what happened. Whenever I saw him, I took action. If I had only waited and heard what she said, I would have been finding myself in this situation arrested. The officer was simply doing what he had to do. We asked if he was hurt. He said, absolutely not. I've got photographs of him to show that he wasn't hurt. That's what we do on every single use of force that we have. Anything more than mere restraint. And again, mere restraint is holding on to somebody. If I've got to pull them, if I've got to take them to the ground, they're reporting that to a supervisor. That supervisor is documenting it. It's going up. The chain is coming across the desk of the chief to evaluate and go from there. So all those are already implemented, in place, and functioning. I'm sorry I missed, somehow my slides got dropped. Are there any questions about the 8 can't wait? Do you have concerns? And I understand the focus right now is on unarmed individuals being killed by police. We got to look at it in context of all actions the police have. The policy is included in their entire use of force policy. By North Carolina law, any police department policy, any city policy is open for public inspection. Anybody can get those as they need to. It's been uploaded into the opportunity for the people to download and view this webinar right now. But those are all out there. We stand behind those policies and we always look at them. If you look at the bottom of the use of force policy, or the top of it, it'll have a review date. Critical ones like use of force is the type that happens every year. That a team sits down, looks at it, looks for opportunities to make changes and address it and go from there. Driving policies are some of those things. There's high liability, high risk, those type of things go on. Other policies might be a 2 or 3 year review, but you're welcome to look through all those and see specifically where we stand in High Point. And what I'll tell you, I'm going to brag again. We are not like all agencies. I think it was the first year I became chief, I went up to John Jay College in New York City for a national network conference. I heard the commissioner of NYPD make a statement that I about fell out of my chair. They were talking about some of the efforts for improved policing. His comment was, New York Police Department has decided that rather than send an officer through rookie school, get them out and deploy them in the most troubled parts of town, they're going to start putting them into field training and then pair them up with a senior officer before they do that. Again, I've only been chief for 4 years, so I think it's either my last year as major or the first year as chief, I was up there and heard that. So only 4 years ago, the New York Police Department wasn't field training people. Guys, that's not how we are here. We field train, we make sure our guys go through, that they meet our expectations. We try, we test them. If they are losing it in a city street on an encounter, if they're losing it in scenarios, we never advance them out past our trainings. We terminate their employment with the police department and we move on. Again, we're not unionized either. I showed you back on the first, the terminations I've had under my watch just as chief. Some places can't do that. Some places, bad officers can continue to be officers. North Carolina, I've talked about training and standards. I've talked about the central depository on all officers within the state, so they can't go jumping from one agency to the other once you've gotten in trouble. We've got those in place. And again, I'm not saying we're perfect. There's always going to be room for improvement, but I do challenge you to specifically see where we stand and where we're at, and concern to what we're seeing around the country and the demands on change that are being made. I'm glad we didn't wait until now to make these changes. Again, I've got a career of about completed at the police department where these changes have been implemented a long time ago. Let me veer off now. Are there any other questions about 8 Can't Wait, policy, procedure, reporting, actions taken by officers? Anything you would like to talk about now? And I promise I'd like for you to review those materials. And if you have questions about the way the policy is written, if you got questions about where a scenario in your mind might fall on our use of force continuum, please let me know and I'll be glad to talk you through that. And if we disagree about what's listed there, we can sit down and talk about them.
I commend you being ahead of the curve on a lot of these issues, and I commend the High Point Police Department for already having policies that keep our citizens safe and apply proper use of force. Doing a good job with that.
Somebody have a question?
Yeah, Chief Schultz, this is Councilman Jefferson. I would like to say thank you for taking the time to come in today to chat with us. When our community reached out and shared the 8 Can't Wait initiatives and shared it with you, shared it with city leadership, and wanted to know where we stood on this, I'm glad that we were able to have this meeting where you could let us know where we do stand. And in fact, I think we have an opportunity going forward to continue to let our community know where we stand, whether that's through some sort of targeted marketing or some sort of intentional messaging and branding that allows folks to know that we have a police department that absolutely embraces every single one of those initiatives. I'm one of those people who understands that perception in many cases for a lot of folks is reality. And I think we all have to have the wisdom that says that right now across the country, due to the social unrest, that we need to take whatever measures are necessary to continue to do what we can to help the perception. I don't think any one of us will say that the perception is just out of our hands and people need to get over it. I think we all care deeply enough about our community. I mean, we're all elected officials who have to run campaigns at a certain point, so we understand the importance of getting ahead of things and allowing to make sure that the perception that's put out there is that High Point is a community where its law enforcement certainly embraces all the initiatives and the 8 Can't Wait. And I do hope that that's something that we'll take seriously. I also hope that we'll continue to have the conversation that allows us to move our community forward, that allows us to empathize with one another. I think both sides, and really I don't want to say both sides because it's not an us and them thing, but I think that folks in whatever sector you're in, whatever walk of life, to empathize with another person. I think it's important for residents of High Point to empathize with our law enforcement. And I think it's very important for our law enforcement as representatives of our government, those who serve and protect, to empathize with the residents who they serve and protect. So thank you again, and I look forward to continued conversations on this topic, and hopefully over the coming months, we'll get chances to continue to talk about this and continue to bring our community in. It's not an easy thing, but I think it's a thing worth doing because our community is asking for it. And again, thank you for your leadership.
I appreciate that. Again, that was my opening comment. I can't dictate, obviously, I know I can't dictate what you guys do, but my beg of you is to help be that force that helps represent us, helps us navigate the situation we're in. I want you guys to be proud of the High Point Police Department. I want you guys to have the understanding. My purpose in coming in here in front of you guys each of these times, I'm going to give you the good, I'm going to give you the bad. No matter how it makes us look, I'm going to give you the data. I want you to have the confidence that moving forward, you have what you need to be able to answer questions that are given out in public. And again, help us. If there's issues, let's address them. If there's not, stand with us, please. Thank you. All right. I'm going to take the opportunity now again. I'm a law enforcement agency chief. Law enforcement, crime is something I've got to talk about I'm gonna take the opportunity to do so now. On June 1st, I was in here, I presented stats about our crime statistics and our data at the time for that first half of 2020 so far. And I showed you that our crimes violently or dramatically reduced, while that of our neighbors around us in the state and around the country hasn't. We are not following the current trends that we see. Guys, I know we've had a lot going on, and unfortunately, we haven't heard anything back about that. I don't know that it's been out in the community. I don't think my officers have heard anything. And I'll tell you, this kind of disappointment I've got, it's on two different issues. Number one, for the past 3 months, we've been dealing with a pandemic that has scared everybody to death. Everyone's told, don't go outside, don't leave your house. My law enforcement officers of the High Point Police Department have continued to work during this time period, and they have continued to do their duties well. We have achieved a drop in our violence even while a pandemic's going on and while everybody else is at home trying to stay safe. I think that's pretty impressive. I'll tell you, the second half of this, my disappointment actually consists of the fact that for 4 years, every time we've had an uptick or a situation of violence happening, we've been challenged about it. Chief, what are you and the police department going to do? One of the first complaints, and I understand we've got a new council. You guys haven't been my council for the entire 4 years I've been here, but I'm saying in general, over the past 4 years, I've had citizens, community members, and council members saying it's time to change programs. What we're doing is obviously not working. We've had an uptick. If you get anything from me, you're going to have a stable, consistent response about everything. I'm going to talk about that. Like I said, if it's bad or good, I'm going to put it out there. You got to use historic data. You got to use our record as we're making judgment calls. I'll tell you the other thing that's also said is that our community partners that we partner with to work to address violence aren't effective. We've got to change that and figure out something else. Matter of fact, other programs specifically that conflict with focused deterrence have been recommended. My consistent response has been to identify the fact that our focused deterrence model, the High Point model that we utilize to address crime, has consistently been identified by the U.S. Department of Justice as being one of the best practices out there for fairly addressing violent crime in the city. We've been doing it since the early 90s. We've had successes. And we'll show you a slide here in a little bit, but again, we've had almost 60% deductions while our population has grown over by 50%. I think the key thing that I always emphasize is that the work we do focuses on the small number of people that are driving our violence. That's how we've done things differently in High Point. It's not a blanket approach where we're stopping anybody moving in the neighborhood, where we're identifying kids walking back and forth from the playground to the basketball court. That's the old way of doing police work. We specifically look for who's driving violence and focus specifically on them. That allows us to fairly and safely implement this type of work. I'll tell you, I've also had to defend again against these proposals that are coming in that people say, Chief, your stuff's not working, you got to change it. I've talked about the statistics. I will talk about statistics all the time. The agencies that have implemented these other competing programs, their crime data is not good. They have increased violent crime consistently. Another concern I've got that I've always talked about is the fact that the competing programs, their efforts are to remove the police department and separate us from the citizens. That is not what we need at a time like this in High Point. We need to continue to work closely together with our community, with our citizens, and I think that's extremely challenging as we see what's going on around our country specifically. I tell you, Chicago over the past week is a great example. The competing program to focus deterrence in our High Point Community Against Violence program was founded in Chicago. Just from this past week, I saw something like 140 shootings and 18 fatalities that have occurred within about a 7-day period. I'll tell you, New York Police Department is one of those agencies that uses competing strategies. I just saw where they had a 358% increase in shootings now compared to the same time last year. The reports I saw said they're looking at the worst violent crime in over a quarter of a century right now coming up. I don't want to be point a finger, but some of the larger agencies around us are both dealing with increases of 20% in homicides right now. That's not what we have here in High Point. And again, I want to take the opportunity to talk about this. And I'm not going to use this to brag about the opportunity, but I'll tell you, this week we had representatives from Philadelphia Police Department contact the High Point Police Department. They've got a new commissioner up there. I think he came in from Dallas Police Department, retired from there, and works at Philadelphia. They told us that they're looking for opportunities on how to address violent crime in their city, and everything they're reading indicates that the High Point model is the best practice out there. And they asked for us to link them up with some people so that we can share our documents, we can share our procedures and processes so they can look at doing that. Why didn't they call Chicago? Why didn't they call New York? I think it's obvious. I'm extremely proud of the commitment. And let me go ahead and let me hit on this again. Right now, our homicides are down 78% for the year. My aggravated assaults are down 15%. All the red, this isn't a ledger. Red's good for us. These are negative declines in numbers. This is what our crime looks like. Let me show you another picture. I've showed you this graph numerous times. This is where we are right now. The bottom right-hand corner of this graph is where I've plotted our violent crime at this time and date. This chart runs from 1992, when my violent crime was up here, to 2020, when my violent crime was right here. Our population has gone from 65 to 70,000 whenever I came on board. It's increased 51%. We're over 115,000 now. Today, as I plot my violent crime, I'm at an 83% decline from when we started our Violent Crimes Task Force program. Yeah, I understand we've had some upticks along the way, but please look at the big picture. And I'm cheating. We're only halfway through the year right now. If we double where we're at right now, we're only looking at being 65% down from our highest crime level. We're on track in the city of High Point to have the safest year we have had at least since 1992 as far as violent crime goes. I think as a council, that's something that we can stand behind. I think as a city, that's something we can push. We're looking for economic development. We're looking to grow our tax base. This is the type of information that we need to, I need help. I'm not the marketer. I can't put this out there, but I rely on you guys to do so. So again, my ask of this is, if I go home tonight and my phone blows up and I'm getting text messages about all violence that breaks out in the city, please don't come to me tomorrow and say, Chief, focus deterrence doesn't work. We need to change our program. Let's go to one of these other programs that pulls out the police from the community. Let's go to the one that does away with our community partners and finds other partners. Please continue to work at us. Look at the long-term benefits. This is what I've been talking about. And you guys can talk about day-to-day activity. And what's happened today is critical. But I also think you got to look at a track record as we're going along. So I hope I don't jinx us. I know we're currently actively addressing several situations that have the potential to go bad through our intelligence unit. We know there's bad stuff going on out there right now. We're doing our best to keep our officers in the right spot, addressing the right people to keep that from happening. The last major point I had on this presentation was on those substations that's been brought up again. I wasn't shared the information. If I can jump into it first, let me talk a little bit about substations. Then I'll deal with any questions you have, and we'll figure out where we need to go from here. You guys, I know your council, you've just approved budgets. You don't specifically know all the cuts that have been made to all the agencies and all the departments. I lost nearly $60,000 in training budget that were cut, not at your doing, but as we're trying to balance where we needed to be, and it's as a result of the pandemic. We understand the tax space has been depleted, that we've had issues coming in as far as our funding goes, but understand that I've got $60,000 shortage. That is just out of the training budget. That's where that was pulled out. They said we need to do away with this. We've got to find places to cut money. That training fund is what I use to make sure that we've got the best tactics and techniques out there for our officers to work hard and to do fair and impartial training. It's what we utilize to send our officers out to get the best practices, to bring them back so that we can implement that stuff around our city. These are the things that we're able to learn about, how to grow the best partnerships with our citizens in our community, so that again, it's not us versus them, but it's us as a city moving forward to have safe and prosperity. It's how our officers learn to be the best investigators and detectives so that we can seek justice for everybody. Another thing that these training funds are used for, to either completely outright cover or to supplement, are the numerous community events that we have implemented as part of our community policing. These activities include everything from our police community day, our open house, where we partner with the Boys and Girls Club. They include our youth program that we partner with the High Point Housing Authority so that they can come and learn about the great opportunities of businesses out here. It's the event that we partner with High Point University, where we teach our students about leadership and servitude. All these types of things are stuff we've had to cancel because of the cuts in budget. I'm very disappointed in that. I know that there's a promise that as the economy rebounds, we can look at some opportunities to deal with that. What I'll tell you that right now we find ourselves in this economic situation. I think that if we're proposing a study for a contract on police substations, I can't personally help but be disappointed in the fact that that funding is going someplace besides my community day events, someplace else besides something I think will help us bridge this gap with the community effectively. I think this is also coming at a time when the relationships between community and our public are the most challenged. And again, I don't challenge any authority the mayor or council has as far as decisions you guys make moving forward, but I've got concerns. I have concerns about not only the cost of the study, but depending on what is proposed, how much rent is it going to cost? How much electricity? How much furnishings? How much internet? That's going to continuously hit on my budget. The critical point that I have, though, is that what's this going to do to my personnel? My personnel, again, I talked about the deployment, and again, the fire department's my buddy, and if I come to a council meeting without making fun of the fire department, something's wrong, but we are not the fire department. My police officers don't sit inside the police department waiting for a call for service that we dispatch and go to. As the police department moves to Westchester Drive, the community is not going to see a change in the response times or the availability of our police officers. Data, I talk about it all the time. We look at the calls for service, we look at response time, we look at travel distances, and each of our beats throughout the city are set up so that we can have a travel time and a response time to critical calls for service that we as a city has deemed as acceptable for our citizens. If I'm going to have to start deploying people into substations to work them, I've got concerns about how I'm actually going to effectively put people in the neighborhoods where the need is to focus on the individuals that are driving our violent crime, to address the complaints that our citizens continue to send forth and ask us to address. So I'm telling you, this is coming at a time right now when I'm looking at half a year early, but I'm on track to have one of the safest years in High Point. It's not because I'm the police chief, but I think it's because of the strategies that I inherited, that I helped develop and participate in. Sometimes I challenged them back in the beginning. There was times when they came to us and said, whenever I was in Vice, and said, here's what we're going to do. For this drug market initiative, you guys are going to go out and make cases on drug dealers, and we're going to bank them. We're not going to prosecute. We're going to come in and tell them, listen, if you guys don't change your ways, we're going to activate this case against you. And I was one of those ones that first said, I've got a case, why don't we charge them and prosecute? Somebody much smarter than me had to explain, how's that doing for us right now? How many times have we served search warrants and arrested the same person over and over and over again, and we get the same results? I said, well, absolutely, that's why we got these records. So let's try something effective, let's try something different. Now I jumped in, and that's how we started our drug market initiative. We've done the same thing with gangs, and our most recent work was with domestic violence. So we've seen a lot of success out of this. Diverting officers, removing resources from my control. I'm really concerned about what the effects of that will be out on the streets. My budget's impacted right now, again, not by council, but by pandemic, so, that's my challenge to you. Is there questions about substations?
If the budget wasn't a concern, if we had unlimited money, obviously we don't know will, but do you feel with your 31 years of experience, implementing a substation will allow your officers to mitigate crime any more effectively?
No, let me tell you what I think. I have had substations throughout the career I've worked here. Baskin Robbins, you remember that at Westchester Mall? That turned into a police substation at one time. Many of our housing authority properties had substations in it. What did we do? We left officers in there and they did nothing. Nobody came to them. It actually turned out for a place for officers to go and get away from things and hang out in the buildings there. If I had unlimited funds though, and unlimited personnel, absolutely, I'll take anything you can give me. I'll be glad to put a person in each neighborhood that can serve as a personal officer for those locations. I'll tell you right now, though, I'm seeing challenges on the horizon for law enforcement. If you gave me an unlimited budget and told me to hire as many officers as I can, how many of your kids are coming to become police officers today? How many are signing up right now? I've got challenges on the horizon for law enforcement. I see. I don't know where that's going to go. We're accessible. We're always looking for ways to be smarter and do our jobs better. One of the things I was able to create was some positions where we have non-sworn people that are taking reports. Officers are expensive. We cost a lot with equipment and whatnot. We got people that you can call in and give those reports over the line. We're always looking for opportunities. I don't want to push out where people have to fill out their own reports and submit them. That's something that we can do though. But I think a high visibility patrol. Speaking of high visibility patrol, have you guys noticed the running lights that's on the back of the police cars lately for the past year? We've got blue lights that just stay on the back of them. Again, part of our efforts to be visible, to be out there in the public. I don't want them missing the car going by. I want them to see those blue lights on, just the rear lights, so people understand there's officers in their neighborhoods and that they can go out and fight them down. So again, if I had unlimited resources, I'll take any opportunity that we've got. I don't have unlimited resources though. I'm really tight on personnel right now. I talked last time back in January about this. I'm concerned, and I don't know what your ideas are. Is it one substation? Is it substations in all districts? Is it just south side? Is it north side? How many people's there? And what are the expectations? My fear is that if we have a location that says this is a substation and a female goes running up there with a guy chasing her in a domestic situation, and they're knocking on the door saying, help me, and I'm not there 24/7, what's that do to us? I'm concerned about that. So now if I have to keep an officer there 24/7, who am I pulling off the street and who's not doing the work? I'm telling you, it's going to make my response times go up, or I'm going to have to start breaking up units. My special victims unit, that's working at the Family Justice Center, doing elderly cases, domestic violence. Is it them? Is it traffic? You guys are killing me right now with complaints about speeders in neighborhoods. Everything we got going on, people are still upset about that. I've got to have my traffic unit out there. Drug complaints continue to roll in. I'm being as effective and efficient with the officers as I can right now, but again, I understand where you guys are as council. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
Right. This is Councilman Johnson, and I have 12 things that will support having one. You mentioned about you were concerned about rent, etc., furniture, and all that good stuff. Okay, you can solve that problem from when you all moved the police station to Westchester. We have a police station now. We won't need the entire building, but we do need coverage on this side of town also. So when you say cost, that building is paid for, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the rent ideal is gone. So you won't need that. It's already set up as a police station. Okay, so you won't need anything involved in that. So when we're talking about money, other than the lights or electricity, I don't understand what the major cost would be. Okay, number two, in this climate, where you have distrust with police officers, it does go on here too. Okay. A substation. Let me start with number one. As I said, we could do that at the police station, okay? The current police station that we have now. Citizens can bond with police officers. I personally do not see it, and I know you said that they go around the neighborhood. I don't see them in mine, okay? Unless something is going on. That's an issue, okay? So citizens can bond with police officers. They can ask general questions, they can build relationships, and become a support system for the police personnel. In order for our citizens to support our police officers, personnel, then I would love to bond with you to make sure, because again, what all we're seeing, we don't see the police officers until there's something going on. Perhaps in your neighborhood you do, but I do not in mine. Number two, substations will provide a stronger police presence in our communities, which will have a strong impact on ensuring safety for all citizens. Number three, substations can increase respect for police personnel, as well as provide a new level of role models in the community. Number four, substations can bridge the gap between the citizens and the police. Number five, substations will allow for police saturation, which will increase awareness of behaviors, trends, and community needs. Number six, substations can become neighbors to work together and look out for others. Number seven, substations can serve as a mobile resource that will assist citizens with assessing needed services and save time and funds from what can sometimes be identified as unnecessary, such as calling for emergency services. Number eight, substations can be a game changer. Most people will change inappropriate behaviors in the presence of police personnel, especially when police personnel are seen and received as partners. I'll work better with anyone if I view you as a partner opposed to something else. Number nine, substations can serve as another means to identify and recruit police officers, which you mentioned, because police personnel in the community will recognize citizens in the community with potential skills and interest in law enforcement. Number 10, substations are proven to be highly effective in neighboring communities by providing much needed monitoring and law enforcement utilizing a non-threatening approach. Number 11, substations can be considered a prevention, which would decrease the need for intervention. And number 12, substations are an innovative and creative approach to community policing. Understand that in North Carolina, you have several cities all around us that have police substations. I'm not saying start with 4 or 5 or 6, okay? I'm saying there's one to start off to see how it is. Again, that is not that expensive, and the study is worth one life that we save. But again, I'm talking about the relationships and the partnerships between our citizens and the police department.
Yes, sir.
And I'll give you a copy of that.
Well, please, Chief, thank you so much. When Mayor asked me to chair this committee, one of the main things was, with any committee, is obviously report to the entire council, whatever the topics are. And So I appreciate you or Chief Reed or whoever comes in to give us an opportunity to report back to council these stats. I know, fortunately today we've got more than our normal committee tuned in, and we'll be able to view this. Councilman Jefferson and Councilman Peters, Councilman Holmes, I appreciate you guys being here. I'm glad that you were able to see this presentation as well. And then it's our jobs as the council and mayor to report back to the community these great accolades of how your department under your leadership is moving forward and decreasing violent crime in the city. So thank you for all of that. I think you got one more thing to point to add.
Yes, sir. I want to take the opportunity. I want to make sure, well, I hope nobody takes this as me being mad or vindictive or anything, but I'm probably going to pretty much read this because, again, words can be so misconstrued here lately. What I want to tell you, though, is that we are obviously seeing many radical proposals for changes, and the future is going to demand that we either stand firm and confident here, the way we are in High Point, that we change course. I'll tell you right now, I'm exceptionally proud of our efforts. I think that we're where we should be as far as performance goes, policy, personnel, and commitment. I'll tell you, I'm proud of the accomplishments I've seen over the 31 years that I've been here, and I take great pride specifically in our ability to drive violent crime down in our city. That is what rocks people's world, violent crime. It's ridiculous, it's uncalled for, it impacts so many people, and that is where we have hung our hat for the entire time I've been in our career. And I'll tell you this, I'm gonna take pride in telling you that while we've done that, it's not by going up and roughing up everybody that we approach, but it's while being just and addressing it with the right citizens that we've had to encounter. As I watch what's going around the country, I have great concerns about the future for it and for law enforcement right now. I mentioned, I don't know who is going to step up and volunteer for this critical life of service to a community right now. They're not beating down my doors wherever my substation or my police department is. I don't think we're seeing that across the country. Since the criminal incident that happened in Minneapolis, I've watched officers threatened, assaulted, and even killed. I've watched officers continue to come and do their jobs well, even though their families are terrified right now. I don't know what the future holds for all, but I do know that here you guys have an opportunity. Our city has an opportunity to stand with our officers and to support them and to focus on their records. I'll tell you this, if you guys continue to support them, if our citizens continue to support our police department, our officers will continue to see High Point as a place that they're willing to serve. I'll tell you, I even think that new officers will see this as a place that they're willing to come to if they see that support out there. And I think there's going to be people that want to serve, that come here to do a good thing for the city. They're going to look for someplace that they have that support. And again, please never think that I've told you that we're perfect. We're completely the opposite. We're constantly every day trying to get better, trying to do our jobs more fairly and more justly. And I'll tell you, that remains our commitment to our citizens. We got great leaders at the High Point Police Department who are prepared to offer guidance and direction to help us maintain the course that you see laid out here in front of you guys right now. I think that they're ready to, again, pick up the task of constantly improving while developing strategies like we've done all along the way to figure out what's next. We're never going to be happy. I had a question once that I was asked about what's an acceptable number of homicides in the city? 0. I don't know what somebody would think I would think on that, but the answer is 0. Until we can draw our crime down to 0, we're going to remain committed. And while my intention wasn't to do it this way, my understanding is that words about my plans have already gotten out. So I'm going to use this opportunity to brief you guys now. Originally, I told our city manager back in November that I had 6 months left to serve as a police officer in the city of High Point. May would have been my 4-year anniversary as being the police chief. And if you know anything about retirements, a lot of it's built upon the fact that your last years of retirement, you have for. Well, I could have retired from the police department back 2-3 years ago. We understand that something came up this spring, and for some reason my plans didn't work out like I expected. You know, I assume that was for a reason. It's been a very challenging time for the past couple of months. Pandemic stuff, the situation that we've had dealing after the criminal activities that we saw in Minneapolis. It's been very tough, and while I probably wouldn't have wished this upon myself, I'm glad I was here to help the department through that. And I'll tell you right now, we've had several weeks now of calm. I hope it was because of the way our officers performed out on the streets. I hope it's because of the partnerships where I've reached out with our community and we've come together to say we're against police brutality. If anybody doesn't think that's what we are, you don't know anything about us. But I'll tell you right now, I think I've done everything I can for the agency for the past 31 years to get us to this point. I'm extremely proud of the track record I've got. I say I'm the chief now. I'm extremely proud of our officers. 4 years ago, I had to come in and figure out, am I going to risk trying to make 4 years of a career as a chief? I don't know if you know it. Chief's kind of a high liability position here. Some people don't make it. But what I knew was I had a department that was solid. I knew it because I came in '89. I've been here longer than any other officer at the agency. I know what their commitment is, and I knew that they would help me get through this. And I'm pleased to say that we've had a couple of bumps and bruises, some not caused by us. We made that way, but I've informed the manager that a plan on as August gets here, my 31st year gets here, I'm gonna go ahead and retire from the police department. All right, that's 31 solid years. That's not counting the 2 years and 2.85 years I have in sick leave that I could have left a long time ago. But I tell you, I'm extremely proud of the service that our men and women put together for this agency. I appreciate the support that I get from everybody from the city side of it. There's so many people out there in the community that have been reaching out to me consistently over the weeks here. We've gotten emails, we've gotten letters, we've gotten donuts delivered. I don't understand. Well, donuts, come on now. Not complaining, but we appreciate that support. And I'll tell you, I thank the city of Pine Point for the opportunities that I've been given, and I hope and pray that I've served you well. August 1st, though, I'm going to pass that on. I'll work with the manager and we'll figure out what that transition is over the next month so we can be ready for the next person to come and figure out where you guys want to take this department, what you want to make your focal point, where you want to be able to go out and tell the community about where we stand as an agency and as a city. Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have a change of command / retirement thing for you, but
You know what? COVID is it's rocked our worlds. I'm not going to be violating any governor's orders. I don't necessarily care for a bunch of people with masks I don't recognize that come hang out at 6 feet apart. So we'll get through that. And again, it's not about me. Right now, it needs to be about the men and women of the police department who are doing the work. I don't know if the community understands the stress that they're under. I guarantee you there's families, they're having to pry hands off the kids every time they go to meeting right now.
sure.
They're committed though. If they weren't committed, this number would be where all these other numbers are seen across the country are right now. We continue to focus, they continue to work. Please support them in my absence.
Thank you for your service. 31 years, it's a long track record. So,
Chief, I'd like to say, this is Councilman Moore. I'd like to say thank you also. It's a very tough job, especially at the top of an institution like you're trying to run. But we certainly tried to support you from the council standpoint as well. But the example that you showed us of your officers at the Walmart
Yes, sir.
is highly commendable, because I don't know if others could hear the, I'm assuming the person that was doing the
The
filming,
crowd there.
They were-
the videographers.
well, they were obviously trying to bait the officers into doing some things that they restrained themselves from. So that was highly commendable. And I appreciate what the men and the women of your force do for us.
Thank you, sir.
Steve, thank you. I appreciate you listening.
do I have any other comments from anyone, any other committee members? Then we will adjourn today's committee. Thank you for everybody who was in attendance today.
Thank you.